right, Graham Rudd, better known as Ruddy to all and sundry. Parachute Regiment, I believe, that's your background. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I joined the Army in 1977 and was posted to 3RAR, and they were at Woodside originally and then moved over to Holsworthy in 81 and 83. They were given the role of being a parachute battalion for the Royal Australian Regiment. And so by 85, pretty much everyone was qualified in the battalion. And so they had that role. I left in 95 and they still had the role then. The role's changed and they're actually now, I think they're MEC and they're actually moved to Townsville, so they get moved around a bit. So yeah, it was a great time. Had trips overseas to Tupara over in England, and I did an exchange over there for about a month, and that was a great sort of thing. They only did a couple of jumps. We were doing like 4 jumps a day, and they were got the guy equivalent rank of me had done about, been in as long as I had done about 20 odd jumps, and I'd done about 70 by that stage. And I said, how come you've only done so many? He said, we're not stupid. We only do as many as we need to. You know, you don't need to kill yourself in training, wait for the real thing sort of thing. So.
Well, statistically, I suppose the theory would be the more times you jump, the more likely you are to have a mishap. Did you ever have one?
Just minor, shoulders, back, knees, minor injuries. I only ever got taken off in an ambulance once. So out of 100 jumps, that's pretty good.
Well done. Congratulations. So how many did you do?
107 all up.
Do you have a memento?
I do actually have a tattoo on my arm.
Let's have a look at the tattoo.
Oh, it's just the battalion there with the battalion wings, and in between the wings.
Good Lord, that's more than a tattoo.
Down there it says 107. So when I get older, and I can't remember, or get older and can't remember, I've still got it, still be able to read it.
Well done.
Mm.
What I'm learning about Bill Hignett is that they should have put him in charge of defence recruitment, because he had this knack of surrounding himself or dragging people in to the projects and the ventures that he was involved in. How did you meet Bill, and how did you get involved now with MASA?
So I'm actually also a member of the Military Brotherhood Motorcycle Club, and we decided in 2014 to assist veterans, and we started our own Veterans Centre at Colonel Light Gardens RSL, but it was like myself as the advocate for compensation, and we had about another half a dozen wellbeing advocates, but we didn't really have any of the contacts that anyone else had. So we were there for about a year or so, and I don't know if you know Titch Tyson, but he was fairly significant in the veteran space at that point, and Plympton Glenelg RSL pension office, which had been going for 20 years, had got down to about 2 advocates, where they used to have 3 or 4 every day for 20 years. And it just dwindled down through natural attrition as they passed on or just gave it up. And so we went there to help. And while that was happening, brought in a few other people from other different ESOs, like the veteran VVF, us, some other RSL people. And so it was great. We were there working away, and then the RSL went into receivership, and we had money invested with the RSL state branch and so forth, and all of a sudden our bills weren't being paid, and we were basically left to our own devices. So we sought funding from other RSLs that we were supporting as far as their veterans and so forth. And then Bill Hignett sort of was brought in to sort of, I guess, make us a cohesive bunch and turn it into a real veteran centre where we had, people that were running reception, people were doing admin, and we were doing our own things rather than everyone having to go at everything. So he'd set it up as a veteran centre with a proper structure, and that's where I first met him, and he brought people in as required to do things, took us out of the dark ages where we were doing everything on paper and digitised everything, and set up the structures and mentoring. And so we had a proper stream for mentoring new trainees and so forth. set up that program. So there was, you had someone to replace you at the end of the day, like after 5-10 years. I've been doing it for 10 years now, but yeah, so Bill came in, and with his contacts and with his, smile and all that sort of stuff, he basically knew people everywhere. And so, he had the contacts and got us going and up and running, and we're very successful at Plympton. We outgrew the place, and we were that successful. We were then offered an anchor stakehold at the Repat Veterans. Well, they call them Veterans and Family Hubs now, but it was just basically the Repat Veterans Centre when we moved there nearly 3 years ago. So, yeah, Bill was instrumental in bringing everyone together and sort of organising us.
So what's your specialty, advocacy?
Yeah, I do the compensation. I'm trained in both compensation and wellbeing, and basically I've now worked my way up to like a level 3. And so basically my role at the centre at the moment is I have 3 trainees that have decided they wanted to become advocates in compensation. So they're the people that put all the claims in for veterans, for their injuries or mental health conditions or whatever, and getting through the maze that's DVA and what they need to provide and so forth. So I'm training those, plus as a level 3 advocate, for those claims that are rejected or people aren't happy with the result from it, the outcome, I then appeal them on their behalf to the Veterans Review Board or wherever the appeal needs to go. So I'm sort of at that level at the moment and enjoying that.
It's hard enough getting a part pension these days, I would imagine. The hoops you need to jump through with the DVA and however hundreds of pages of rules and regulations. How do you get your head around that? What special gift have you got?
No real special gift. However, I did 30 years in defence, then worked for Defence for another 9 years in the safety environment. So I saw all the injuries coming through and conditions and so forth. And then, so basically I did 30 years, did another 9 years with Defence at 9 Brigade at Keswick in the safety environment, and then started doing this. So pretty much all my adult life, I've been from 21 onwards to now, I've been working either in Defence, for Defence, or for veterans. So I went through the process, 2 VRBs myself, about 5 or 6 different advocates helping me over the time, some better than others, and you get that, and 2 VRBs, Veteran Review Boards, to actually get to where I got to. So having had that experience, I know what it's like from the veteran side and the family side, because there were times that I gave up work, but I wasn't getting any money because you had to give up work first before they realise that you're actually losing an income, and then you put in a claim under one of the acts. There's 3 different acts, and they're all different. And so it depends when you served and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty complicated, but I'm covered by the 3 acts. So that actually helps because I've been through it myself. So having been through it and knowing the entitlements and what's required to get things accepted under each of those acts, it makes it easier to get your head around, as opposed to someone just going, I got injured in Defence Force. Why am I not being compensated, or why am I not getting medical treatment for it?
DVA gets an occasional whack from veterans in particular who say that they're simply not being listened to, or they're being sidelined, or there's 100 different reasons why they're not being satisfied with the service they're getting. In your role as an advocate, what do you do with those people? I mean, number one, do you agree that the DVA really is not really fit for purpose?
Well, the actual current legislation is now being changed and then being looked at and being harmonised into one bill. So there'll be one act going forward in 1 July 26, and they're supposedly picking all the best bits out of the previous acts and putting them into. They've got an act that started in 2004 called MERCA, and so they're going to grandfather all the clauses from the previous act, so there's no detriment to to the veterans, supposedly, into this new act, which will mean that hopefully the claims will be done more quickly, because as it is with 3 different acts, the delegates have to be trained in 3 different acts, and the benefits that flow from them are different. So, if there's just the one act and the benefits are all the same sort of thing all the way through, it's going to make a lot easier for DVA to finalise claims and provide the benefits, hopefully, to veterans. And it'll make it a lot easier for people like me that train people, because I won't have to train them in 3 acts. It'll only be the 1 act. So when it hasn't actually, it's still in draft and so forth and out for consultation at the moment. But if that actually goes ahead, that's going to make things a bit easier. DVA's done a lot of, I've been doing this for 10 years, and DVA have brought in a lot of things to improve their services. And there's a lot of good people in DVA that'll, bend over backwards and go beyond what's reasonable sort of thing just to help you. But they've got their rules and regulations, and the Act, provide those sorts of things. And, there's these days people getting out. It's so much easier to lodge a claim. They have these electronic means now. They can just do it on your phone, and you can lodge 20 or 30 claims in matter of, half an hour sort of thing, just by going onto My Service and lodging them. Whereas before they used to be paper copies, and, it'd take a while and so forth. And DVA brought that in several years ago to increase, people, I suppose, to simplify the means of lodging claims. And they were sort of undone by their own success, because people just got on there and started lodging, 20 or 30 claims rather than 1 or 2 claims. And then they were inundated, and then there's like a year, 2 years, and then 3 years in some cases backlog for claims to be accepted under the new Act, because there was so many things going on with, Iraq, Afghan, all those sorts of things. Yeah, there was a myriad of claims coming in, and they just didn't have the workforce to actually deal with it. They've employed a lot of people, but now they're all inexperienced. And a lot of times they'll just have a checklist in front of them, and they'll work off that, and they don't know why they're doing it. They just I've got a checklist. I need this. Well, I've given you that, but it's in this format, sort of thing. So yes, they've done some good things, but is there room for improvement? Definitely.
The demands seems to be increasing for the services.
Yeah, definitely increasing. Yeah.
Some years ago, I spoke to Professor Sandy McFarlane, who's a PTSD advocate expert at Adelaide Uni.
Mm.
And he told me that anyone who had served in the military or in the armed services and had seen any sort of action, 100% guaranteed would finish up with PTSD. It's just the way it was. And because I was trying to split hairs with him and saying, well, surely there's got to be one thing is worse than the other, etc. And he said, no, it's 100% guaranteed. So that being the case, things like peacekeeping operations, which are anything but peaceful, there is a whole cohort of younger veterans who are coming through the system that need that service and need your advocacy. Have you found in the 10 years that you've been doing it that demand has grown?
Certainly demand for mental health, because when I first started, like 10 years ago, I mean, you do a PTSD claim every now and then, but it's certainly with the people getting out, or the people, they're actually now coming forward with mental health to actually, like while they're in defence, before they would just go, I can't handle this, I'm getting out, and they'd get out without getting a medical discharge or going to see anyone because of, they didn't want to look like they were weak or whatever back in the day. Even when I got out in 06, they were only just starting to speak about it, like for the OH&S, work health and safety, about, coming forward and talking about PTSD for those people from Timor, for instance. And, like how many people went to Timor, right? How many people have, suffer with these sorts of things. And there was initially about 4 hands went up, and then there was a few more. Then there was a few more, and by the end, after a few people were speaking, there was probably about 30 people put their hands up. And it's like, well, you got PTSD, you're a nutter sort of thing. That's not the case. I deal with a lot of even senior officers and stuff that have just sort of been really stoic about it, and then all of a sudden just broken down. And my old man was a Vietnam veteran. He was in the training team in 65, and when the Gulf War happened in the 90s, when it was on TV every day, I got a phone call when I was living in Holsworthy, and he rang me and said, "Get your kids, get them out. The VC are coming." And I went, "Well, what's that all about?" I rang my sister, and he goes, "He's gone really troppo." And he ended up in the ward for PTSD in Victoria. So, and apparently he'd had nightmares and all this sort of stuff, but we never knew about it because we were, kids sort of thing, been dealing with things. But so, and that took, 25 years or 30 years or something to come out. Yeah. So
in the compensation advocacy, I imagine the greatest joy that you would get from that is when you actually solve someone's problem, that when their financial situation is sorted.
Yeah, sometimes what they have is within 2 of the acts, they have things called a statement of principles, which are done by these doctors from specialists. So they'll go, the causal factors for PTSD are these things. For osteoarthritis, it's these things, those sorts of things. And the requirement is to meet at least one factor. If you meet one factor and it's defence caused, it gets accepted. And there's people there that, and for whatever reason, that some of them have timeframes on them. Like they might have a 20-year time frame from the time they were in the Defence Force till the diagnosis of that condition, and they miss out by 2 years or something like that. And legislation says 20 years or whatever it happens to be, and they're just outside that, and it becomes a bit. But it's I obviously had it before that. When they diagnosed me, it was severe. So obviously I had moderate and so forth before that. Yeah, but the clinical onset, as the word they use, until you actually get a doctor's diagnosis, or in the case of osteoarthritis, X-rays. Oh yeah, you've got it. It just magically appears on that date. So those sort of things are really frustrating, but that's the system that we've got to work with, and people tend to wait until it, oh, I'm all right. Most people, especially the blokes, I'm all right. And then all of a sudden, I can't work anymore because of my knee or my hip or whatever. And then they find that they're outside the time frame, which is frustrating because, like, whenever we see anyone or do any outreaches and discussions at RSLs or veteran centres or whatever, we always say, look, put the claim in, while you're in, or, before you get out, while you've got the resources to do it. Don't wait, 20 years or whatever until you think that, I can't do anything anymore, because that's likely to be detrimental to, to yourself.
Veteran damage is not gender specific.
No.
You got female advocates?
Got one female. Well, got one female compensation advocate. We've got another female wellbeing advocate as well, because obviously some conditions and some of the bullying and harassment and all that sort of stuff that comes through. Although I'm surprised that a lot of the women that have been through defence don't care who they tell. That, like they'll come to me and tell me all about all sorts of weird stuff that you wouldn't think they'd discuss with me, but they do. And others are, no, I want to speak to a female because they've been in an abusive relationship or something. So I get that. And so we have a female compensation advocate there that's just finished her level 1. So she's still under supervision, but she's still, she's learning and getting there. So that's good.
DV must be one of the factors. It's certainly getting a lot of publicity most recently, but domestic violence is something that within that veterans community, the consequence, the fallout from that must be pretty widespread, I would have thought.
The well-being side of the house, where the husband or partner's got PTSD or something like that, where they have flashbacks and anger issues or alcohol or substance abuse and become violent. And then basically the partner and the kids need to get out. And so our wellbeing advocates look after that sort of thing. And it's got to be something that's done sort of straight away. It's not like, I'll get and see you next week. If something's happening, you can't just let it go and say, we'll book you in a month's time, because that just, so wellbeing advocates often get a phone call and they've got to act, immediately to, for the person's safety or whatever. So, yeah.
If I were a male, there would be circumstances where I would probably want to see a female advocate rather than another man.
Yep.
Can't think of an instance off the top of my head, but it's not like gender specific. You can only deal with men or what have you.
Probably, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 in 100 would actually, like specific, I'm a guy, I want to see a guy, or I'm a female, I want to see a female.
No.
Most of them don't care, as long as it's someone that can point them in the right direction, because they've either tried to deal with DVA and given up, or basically spoken to someone that said, look, I did mine and it didn't turn out well. Go and see these guys, or that's where we get a lot of our clients from, just word of mouth.
You're probably locked into this system now for life. You know that.
Yeah, that's what
you're stuffed.
That's what we were talking about just before I came in here. They were talking about, what's going to be our plan in 5-10 years down the track, and realistically, all the eastern states have paid advocates. And when I did my level 3, my course to develop, everybody else on the course was a paid advocate. Getting upwards of 70, 80 grand a year and all this sort of stuff. Oh, I get a car with mine. I'm going, oh, good on you. Whatever. But I've always been, in fact, I did 30 years in the Army. I worked with Defence for another 9 years. And I had that help from 5 or 6 different advocates over that time. And I think, well, my time to give back, sort of thing. And it keeps me off the streets, so to speak.
Yeah, no, good on you. What's the question I should have asked you that I haven't, that you need to tell me about?
The whole thing about moving into the repat was a thing that I had, like the Military Brotherhood, when I heard that the repat was, the hospital was closing. That was several years ago now. We put in an expression of interest to move in there as a veteran centre, like move from the RSL we're at Colonel Light Gardens into the repat somewhere. And that never went anywhere, because then they were going to sell it off and make it, living quarters for Flinders or university or something like that. However, that reared its head several years later when the Liberals got in, and they go, oh, we've got an expression of interest from this group. I went, oh, yeah, okay. And that, I think, had something to do with the actual, them coming to us at Plympton initially to sort of look at our track record and what we've been doing and how we were structured, and then how we could pick up and move it and put it in the repat. So that's, something that the club and myself pretty proud of, that we actually had some input into the genesis of the repat being selected, or, becoming a veteran centre. Bill, as I said, Bill was the glue that brought us all together and structured us and got us looking, instead of just focusing on our jobs and, head down, ass up sort of thing, and not looking outside and how we could improve ourselves. And we did that, and we're still 3 years later, we're going strong. So yeah, pretty much that's it, I guess.
What sort of bike do you ride?
At the moment, I have a Triumph Tiger GT Pro, which is a road-going version of the old BMWs you see, the BMW
the
GSs,
police bikes.
or the GS bikes that go off-road and all that sort of stuff. Well, it's Triumph's got a version that goes off-road, and it's got another version very similar with more road going, like adventure touring bike, or sports touring bike, I suppose. But it looks like an adventure bike, which everyone keeps mentioning to me, and because I've got one of those square things on the back, like a steel box, and they keep calling it the Uber Eats bike, and you get a pizza delivered and shit, stuff like that. Yeah.
And what capacity is it?
1,200. Well, it's little. I had a rocket, 2.5 litre rocket just before it, except someone decided they were texting and decided they didn't want to stop and ran in the back of me.
Yeah.
So that kind of messed the bike up a bit, shook me up a bit.
You watch MotoGP?
Yeah, I watched. Actually, I watch it on YouTube. I don't. It's got to get KO or whatever to watch it live, but I normally just watch it on YouTube the next day.
No, I love it. I have never owned a bike in my life. I've only ever been on a couple, and that's passenger.
Yeah.
The bravery and the amazing talent that these guys have got is just extraordinary.
The way they come off at 200 kilometres an hour, bouncing around the place, get back up, get on the scooter, go back, get the next bike and just jump on it and keep going. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, all of them must be riding with broken bones and ribs and stuff.
Definitely.
Ruddy, you're a good man.
Okay, thank you.